But whilst the law took its course and brought the Shankill butchers to justice, others believed that was not enough. 2 of the leaders of the gang were shot dead. One, it is thought, by the IRA, the other by a relative of one of their victims.
Were you surprised the butchers weren't stopped?
No,
Why not?
because of the then Pertain leadership.
They just let it go ahead?
I don't think they had the battle to stop them.
The bottle?
The guts.
I, at one stage, actually tried to commit suicide, where I cut my own throat, and subsequently ended up on a life support machine, and from there into a mental institution.
Why did you try and cut your own throat?
I'm not a psychologist, so I can't. I have my own opinion, and I think that it was definitely linked to my father. I think in some way, subconsciously, I might have wanted to know how it really felt.
By the mid-70s, the British felt they'd tried every political initiative and all had failed. Given that there was no immediate prospect of progress, the Labour government of the day put politics on hold and made security the #1 priority. Suspects were arrested, interrogated by the police, and sentenced by special courts. The change of policy did produce results as the killings began to decline. For the first time, the government believed it had the terrorists on the run.
But the IRA was determined to show that it was not finished, with 2 devastating attacks, both on the same day. In County Sligo, it killed the Queen's cousin Lord Mountbatten, blowing up his boat. 3 others died with him.
I remember the day. I remember it well, because that night our unit of the Ulster Volunteer Force had a meeting, and that night we decided that we were going to retaliate.
That same afternoon, the IRA killed 18 soldiers in 2 bomb attacks at Warren Point. Most of them were members of the Parachute Regiment. It was the Army's biggest single loss of life in the conflict. Loyalists were shocked at the audacity of these twin attacks on the Crown and its forces. The UVF was bent on retaliation. The target they selected was a Catholic man called John Patrick Hardy.
The next day I went and I picked a motorbike up and a handgun, and we drove into a street called Ashton Street where this man Hardy lived. The propellant passenger got off the motorbike and fired 2 shots, got back on the motorbike, and we made our escape.
Did you see what happened, what he did?
No, I heard gunfire.
You went to the door and rang the bell?
Rang the door.
And the man's daughter answered it?
I don't know who answered it. I heard the gunfire, and
Then Mr. Hardy came to the door and was shot dead in front of his children?
I don't know.
That's what happened.
I didn't know what had happened.
How would you feel if you remember that family? Somebody came to the door, your child answered it, and you were shot dead.
Anger, hatred. I'd be full of hatred.
You didn't feel any emotion?
No.
Any pity?
No.
For the man who was shot dead?
No.
John Dillon was sentenced to life for the murder of John Patrick Hardy.
After you'd carried out the killing, what did you do?
Went home.
How did you feel?
Okay. Normal.
No anxieties, no worries,
No.
no remorse?
No.
Did you celebrate?
No. I don't believe in celebrating over anyone's death. I'm a soldier. I don't need to celebrate over a death.
Inside the Maze prison at the start of the 1980s, 10 Republicans starved themselves to death in the Great IRA hunger strike. They refused food, insisting they were prisoners of war and not common criminals. One after another, they joined the hunger strike. They said they would only end it once the government granted their demands. As IRA prisoners prepared to die, tension in the Loyalist community became unbearable.
The hunger strike was a period when people again expected war. My whole mentality at that time would have been preparing for war.
The turning point in the hunger strike was the death of Bobby Sands. Sands had just been elected as a Westminster MP. To Loyalists, the tens of thousands who walked behind his coffin were all supporters of the IRA, poised to destroy Ulster.
People at that time thought that the Protestants was fearful of what was going to happen, that there was going to be an uprising and they were all going to be slaughtered.
Loyalist fears of doomsday were heightened when they saw the British and Irish Prime Ministers working in harmony to bring London and Dublin closer together. Billy Giles was from a Loyalist family in the shadow of the shipyard in East Belfast. His father and 3 brothers had all joined the British Army. Billy had originally joined the UVF, but drifted away. Fearing the growing strength of the IRA and the growing links with the South, he became involved in the UVF once again. He was now ready, in his eyes, to defend his community by taking reprisals for Republican violence.
Who was the target?
The target was a Catholic man. Guy the same age as myself. Didn't matter who it was to me, like. Didn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered who it was.
But you were supposed to be non-sectarian.
I know.
All that changed.
Everything went out the window. The whole being, my whole being up until that time was away. That's just the way it affected me. You're asking me how it affected me, Peter, and I'm telling you that's how it affected me personally. What would have been classed before as a decent young man suddenly turned into this. And that's the way, what Northern Ireland and what the environment I was living in, that's the effect it had on me.
What did it turn you into?
It turned me into a killer. It turned me into a killer.
His victim was a workmate and friend. His body was found in the boot of his own car. Billy Giles had shot him through the head. At Hillsborough Castle, Mrs. Thatcher further cemented the relationship between the two governments. She signed the Anglo-Irish Agreement with the new Irish Prime Minister, Dr. Garret FitzGerald. The agreement gave Dublin a direct involvement in the affairs of Northern Ireland.
Straight down in front.
I didn't get home until evening for dinner, and my teenage children were watching television, and they were all looking very stunned and quiet. And I said, "What's happened?" And they said, "Oh, Mrs. Thatcher's handing us over to Dublin." I said, "What?" I didn't know she was here in Northern Ireland. And I said, "I must watch the news." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. Mrs. Thatcher's the Prime Minister today, but she'll not be the Prime Minister forever. But we've been in Northern Ireland for 300 years, and we'll be here when she's gone."
Tens of thousands of Loyalists gathered in the biggest demonstration the city had seen since 1912. Then Sir Edward Carson pledged that Ulster would never surrender to Dublin by accepting Home Rule. Loyalists saw Paisley as Carson's successor.
Where do the terrorists return to for sanctuary? To the Irish Republic. And yet Mrs. Thatcher tells us that that republic must have some say in our province. We say never! ever.
What Paisley had prophesied over all these years now seemed to be coming true.